campaign trail, political candidates often share stories about people they've talked to and what matters to them. But leaders of housing authorities in Maine say one story being shared by former Congressman Bruce Poliquin isn't real.
The Republican is hoping to unseat Democratic Congressman Jared Golden in Maine's 2nd District. One of Poliquin's campaign platforms has been to secure the border. And while campaigning, even here in our studios, he shared the story of a woman he met in Lewiston.
And a wonderful lady I started talking with was working on the tables, and we just started up a conversation. I said, "Where do you live?" She pointed to the parking lot. She said, "I live in my car with my 2 cats." I said, "You can't do this. You've got to go talk to the housing authority folks." She said, "Bruce, I did. I was at the top of the list to receive an apartment. I got bumped down the list because folks have come in this country illegally."
First, it's important to know that the former congressman is talking about foreign-born people who do not possess a valid visa or other immigration documentation because they entered the country without inspection or stayed beyond the terms of a temporary visa. It's also important to know that asylum seekers who come into the country with documents are not included in that group. Asylum seekers come through legal channels and work with agencies, often federal or municipal, to get the proper documentation to work. Maine's housing authorities do not work with either of those groups.
Unfortunately, folks will ask us a lot, what can we do about these asylum seekers and folks like that? And we really can't do anything. The only way an asylum seeker or someone without a legal status could be in our housing is if one of our head of households took them in, as a member of their household. And even in that case, we would have to prorate our subsidy to be sure none of our subsidy went to that illegal, the person without legal status.
Which brings us back to Poliquin's story about the woman in Lewiston. Is there any scenario in which that's possible, in which someone is waiting for housing and they get bumped off of a list because of someone entering the country illegally?
No, housing authorities cannot lease public housing to someone who doesn't have a legal status, either a green card or something like that. They cannot be a head of household in our properties, nor could we issue them a voucher for them to go find housing in a private property with one of our vouchers if they do not have legal status.
Portland Housing Authority's Cheryl Sessions joined leaders from housing authorities all over the state to share a statement in response to Poliquin's story. It reads in part, quote, "Such misinformation erodes trust in the public housing system on which many individuals and families depend for safe, quality, affordable housing," end quote. In fact, Sessions says people who are experiencing homelessness, as this woman allegedly is, are given priority for housing, along with veterans and children.
We have veterans that are homeless in this state. We have teenagers living in shelters. Let's take care of those first. I think that's common sense. I think it's the right thing to do.
When asked about the response from the housing authority leaders, Poliquin said,
"I don't know about this conversation this lady had with the housing authority folks. What I do know is that our border's been wide open for almost 2 years, and we now have several million people who've come in this country illegally. We don't know who they are. Most are allowed to remain. They're being transported around the country, including Maine, and Maine taxpayers now have to take care of these people."
Your local housing authority does not spend any money on illegal aliens.
Sessions says the only reason someone would be bumped off of a housing list is if their local housing authority tried to contact them, whether through mail, phone, or email, and couldn't reach them. She said, unfortunately, that can happen to someone experiencing homelessness, which is why it's so important to share a family member's information or an email address that can be checked in a library. She encourages the woman in Poliquin's story to reach back out to her housing authority to get the help she needs.